What's going on, guys? Happy holidays. I hope everyone's having a phenomenal holiday season this year, getting all the cards that they want or any kind of the gifts or anything like that, pulling starlights, all that good stuff. I had a bit of extra free time, and so I figured I would record a video for you guys. I've been doing a lot of updates on this branded Bystial deck profile, and I've been playing a lot at locals recently, and I think that this build is actually really cool. It has a little bit of spice to it, and I think that some people will kind of appreciate. I've been playing a pretty hefty mix of variants of this deck, and I think I finally found one that I think works in like a lot of scenarios and plays really good into a lot of other decks and a lot of other boards, especially because this deck had a really big problem with Flunder, and it still kind of does, but I think I've helped a little bit to kind of remedy some of that. I think it really does a good job at keeping toe and toe with Tear as well, because the shuffle backs were always kind of a problem for this deck, as well as the fact that they can play on your turn and kind of set up while you're also trying to get your stuff set up, which was always kind of a problem. So I think that this version kind of helps out with that. It gives you a whole myriad of different options that you can do, even if you're not playing against those matchups, or to give you different types of advantages depending on how you want to play the deck. And I actually really like this version a lot because at its core, it's still the branded Bystial deck with a couple modifying changes, and I don't want to go too far into it just yet until I kind of talk about it. But I think that it allows you to change up your playstyle pretty drastically, and I think that's really cool. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this content helpful and entertaining. Helps a lot for getting my content out there and giving us more viewers and more opportunities to be able to put out more deck profiles and stuff like that, more explanations, combo videos, etc. And feel free to leave a comment too if you have any other suggestions on what other things I could add to the deck. So without going too deep into it, I'll just jump into the deck profile, and I'll kind of skip over the stuff that is super obvious or the stuff that's from the previous profile. And I'll just go deeper in explanation on the cards that like kind of make a big difference. So first things first, we're going to start off with the Bystials. So we have the 2 Lubellion. This time I actually cut down the Bystial package just a little bit to 2 Magnemite, 2 Druisworm, and 2 Sarnier. The reason why I cut down the package a little bit was to make room for like some of the newer cards I put in. Sarnier is still really good because the fact you can dump any branded spell and trap is really phenomenal. And then obviously 2 Druisworm is kind of nice. It's more so just to maximize the names while also still having like enough light targets for branded fusion. Next up for the Despia monsters, we have 3 Alubers, 3 Tragedy, and 1 Adlib. Adlib's kind of cuttable, to be honest. One really good thing about Adlib is that when you get to use them, it's super powerful. Like anytime I've resolved Adlib, I'm pretty sure I've won that duel. Next up for what I call the Albaz package, we have the 2 Fallen of Albaz. You can probably bump that up to 3 if you really want to. Sometimes I like having a third one because that way I don't have to worry about recycling it as much. 1 Mercurier and 1 Albion. I was running the list where I had, it was more focused on the branded loss side of it, where I was running 2 of these. But I had to cut some space somewhere to kind of make room for some of the stuff I thought was more adaptable for the format. But you can run 2 of these if you want to focus more on the non-spice version. Next up for the branded spell and trap cards, we of course have 3 branded fusion. The unfortunate thing is that in the OCG this recently got cut to 1, but obviously we're going to play 3 until we can't. 2 branded in red, 2 branded opening. That does it for the spells. You can change this to 1 branded red if you really want. Sometimes I'll side 1 out if I feel like I'm scared about bricking on it. I personally like 2 just because I like having it in hand for turn 1 for being able to dodge like imperms and stuff like that, but it's not super necessary. The next up for the traps, we have the 1 branded banishment and the 1 branded retribution. I used to side this card out a lot because I felt like it was kind of bricky, but honestly, I don't think I'll ever do that again unless I really feel like I absolutely have to. Because this card has so many, with the new strategy, it has way too much synergy with the deck, and it's way too easy to set up really good plays with this card. Next up for the continuous branded cards, we have the Regained, the Lost, and the Beast, running the whole package here. Lost is just insane. If you set it up properly, like if you open with this or with branded fusion and you already have a Luber in hand, you go normal summon a Luber, search the one you're missing. This actually makes so that your opponent can't respond, assuming that you set up the chain links properly, until after you already bring back your Lubellion from the grave, which means that you just get to basically place the branded beast for free, because branded loss is just such a broken card, saying that your opponent can't respond. Next up for the spice, we have 3 Havnus, 2 Shiren, and 1 Merly. I know what you're thinking. Oh, dude, you sold out. You went to tiers. This is just a tier deck, etc., etc. I know it looks that way, but it's actually, this is just ancillary. So I only go into these cards if, obviously, like if the opportunity presents itself with like Havnus or whatever, like I have this in hand and my opponent activates a monster effect, then yeah, of course I'm gonna Havnus. But honestly, these cards, they're only for being distractions for your opponent. Because the minute they see you go Havnus or go Shiren effect or whatever, they're gonna start trying to hit the tier stuff out of your grave. Then you have free roam to do all the branded stuff you want to do. Not only that, but I got really tired of my opponent milling like half my deck in like 1 or 2 turns to only then lose like most of my branded fusions, lose like all the important cards out of my deck, and then or for them to like spin them back. Like they have like, okay, cool, they milled the Lubellion, they just spin it back or whatever. And for them to have like no repercussion of doing so, these cards make it so that when my opponent mills my deck, now they have things they have to worry about. Because this just turns everything online. Like for example, like you mill one of these tiers, of course I'm gonna go the whole tier route and set up a whole tier board against you already. Or if they hit like my other branded cards, I can use so many cards to bring them back or to place them back, or it's just insane what you can do with these cards, and I'll kind of go over that in a little bit. What's really cool too is you can go stuff like Shiren, then pitch Tragedy, get a free Aluber, also mill a few cards. It actually turns hands that were kind of bricky. It actually allows you to unbrick them, because if you open like Shiren plus like the Albion Dragon plus like, I don't know, like a Bystial, let's say, one thing you can do is you can go like Shiren effect, pitch the Bystial, like let's just say like Sarnier, and then you pitch off Sarnier, like let's just say off the Shiren mill you whiff. You can actually off the Bystial pitch Branded Fusion from your deck to your grave. Then you go Albion effect, pitching Retribution. Go Retribution, pick up the Branded Fusion. Now you have full combo, and all you have to do is just do a simple Shiren mill, and that's if you like miss everything. If you hit anything like a Tragedy, you hit a Haviness, you hit a Merly, whatever, then you get full combo just into tier stuff. Now they have to respond to that, and so it just becomes this huge mess for your opponent to have to deal with. Not only that, but sending one of these off Branded Fusion is just insane because it gives you a lot of options as well. The spread like this is just because it's a very small package, just solely there to like prevent your opponent from trying to like mill your deck. Because tiers, when they aren't milling like 5 cards from both players' deck, because the minute they see this in your deck, they're not going to use Agito anymore, they're not going to use Kelbeck, all that type of shit. They're just going to focus on milling their own cards, which means that they have very small windows now to activate their own cards, because they're going to be hitting like dumb shit like the Earth Fairies or whatever they can't really do a whole lot with. And plus, we run a pretty decently sized Bystial package, so even if they hit like 1 or 2 names, you're able to banish them, and at best put them on a Rukalos or something like that. Like it's really hard for them to like play through your stuff when they can't mill like half their deck. Last but not least, we have the power spells. Double Super Poly, just like I said, hand size is kind of a problem with this deck. Foolish Burial, because this turns online so many cards. Instant Fusion now, because we have the kit. We're also running a Mud Dragon, as you'll see, so there's also Instant Fusion into Mud Dragon. You can also pick this up off of the Abelonatus Dragon, which is kind of wild. And then just the one called by for hand traps and whatnot. And it also just turns off like tiers as well, other things like that. Next up for the extra deck, the one card that's not a fusion that we're running is the Wallow. I had considered making this a Sprite Sprint because and bumping up the Merly count to 1. Right now the deck's at 42 cards. You can either bump it up to 43 or cut one other card, like maybe like the Abelonatus, the Adlib, anything like that. Making this a sprint because sometimes you might want to go like the greedy play and go, because obviously we're playing the tiers for playing kit, right? Sometimes you want to go like kit, add Merly, and then use kit effect to send yourself to then mill 8. And then sometimes you might miss, but you still have like a level 2 on board. You just summon another monster like a Bystial, link those into Sprint, and then dump in a Merly from the deck. And that way you have at least the Rukalos. But because, and also I cut down the Bystial package as well. If you run a heavier Bystial package, I'd say this is probably better. Double Mirror Jade, double Albion, one Lubellion, and then 1 Alba. So some people might run 2 Lubellion. I don't think that's incorrect, but I haven't seen a huge need to run a second one. I've pretty much been fine with just the one. You just have to use it a bit more sparingly. And then also, don't forget that this is just as many dragons as you want plus Fallen of Abaz, which means that you can use like, let's just say the game's been super grindy and you just have like 6 like, you know, banished Bystials. You have like 1 Fallen of Albaz in the banish as well, and you want to just like recycle all your cards back. You make Lubellion, you just shuffle every dragon from your grave and your banish back into the deck. Now your deck's basically brand new again, and you just go full combo again whenever you want. This guy also searches Instant Fusion, which is kind of gas. Next up we have the just the power cards lineup. So Guardian Chimera plus double Masquerade. You can cut 1 Masquerade if you want. You'll see I'm running less Super Poly targets, but maybe you want to run more of those. I'm not sure. I guess kind of depends on your play style. I like having double Masquerade because I don't ever usually make double Masquerade on the same board at the same time. If I do, usually it's definitely GG's. But what happens is with like they'll out one, but in the process of outing one of them, they've used so much resources that if you make a second one off like branded in red, it just makes it a huge problem for them. So I like running 2. Also, you could argue that Masquerade's sort of a Super Poly target. 1 kit, 1 Rook. That's the extent of our Tearelements package. Your whole Tearelements package is just to get to this guy anyway. Let's just say that like they stop your branded plays, you go into this, this just stops being able to do like a lot of other things like that really hurt you. Especially like if you're going back to like your turn, like turn 3, and then your opponent's trying to like Bystial you while you're trying to set up your board to kill them. This just stops them from doing that. So Rukalos is just really good. It's just really easy to recycle these cards and keep on fusing into other things. Next up, we have the Super Poly lineup. So we have 1 Stapelia, 1 Garura, 1 Mud Dragon. The Drago Stapelia is self-explanatory, so good for Super Poly and just getting rid of like a fusion and then be able to have like a monster negate after that. The next up, I was kind of debating between these guys plus like Starving Venom, and I couldn't figure out which one I wanted more. Usually nowadays people have a way to play around Starving Venom, so I thought these would be better targets. The only unfortunate thing is that you can't make these off of the spells and traps like Branded Red or Branded Banishment because they have to be level 8 or higher. But the cool thing is that this is also an instant fusion target, which means you can summon this, call Dark, and now your opponent can't target most of the stuff on your field with like card effects. So like they can't like soul leak like most of your monsters, stuff like that. This is just really good because Super Poly is too good against like random decks like Exo Sister, Sprite, Flunder. If you went first, they're trying to establish their board. This is really good too. It takes the bodies off their board. So like these cards are just like really good, like just like generically. So here's a pretty interesting hand. We have a lot of stuff that we can abuse here. So with this hand, I'd probably just actually start off with going Shiren Effect. I want to try to hold off the Branded Fusion until I kind of know what's in my opponent's hand and what I have to play around. So we'll go Shiren Effect. We'll pitch the Sarnier because Sarnier has a really good Grave Effect. We'll mill 3. Oh, this is actually insanely gas. Okay, so we have a lot of options here. What we're going to do here is we're actually going to go Chainlink 1 Sarnier, Chainlink 2 Havanus, or sorry, Chainlink 1 Havanus, Chainlink 2 Sarnier to dump. Because here we actually have a really good setup where we can actually just basically chain block everything in the future. So not chain block, but actually just like stop our opponent from being able to respond. We're going to do Branded Lost here, which seems like an odd play, but I'll show you why in just a second. We're going to go Havanus and Shiren into Kit, assuming they haven't Bystialed us or something like that. Even if they Bystial us there, that's totally fine because we really don't care that much because we want to just try to get our Branded Fusion to just really cause as much damage as possible. And so here, what we can actually do is go Kit Effect. So if you wanted to go like the greedy play, you could actually add Merly here. And then go Kit Effect to, mill 8 or whatever. You can do that. I think that because of what we've already set up in our graveyard, that's not necessary. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm not going to send Merly because we only have 1 copy of Merly. So just say they have like another Bystial or whatever. I don't want to get rid of my 1 copy of Merly. So we used Havanus already. I'm actually going to use the Shiren since we haven't used Shiren yet to fuse. Then we're going to go Shiren Effect. Now we're going to make the Rukalos. What's actually really cool about this is that not only is our Rukalos here to protect us against the branded, Bystial stuff, is that our Rukalos actually also protects us against Nib now. I know nobody's running Nib or whatever, but you never know. Some wacko out there could be running Nib, and if the off chance that they are, we're now protected. We've only summoned, what, like 3 times? And then so now what we can actually do is we can actually go Albion Effect. For those of you who don't know, you can still use Albion in Graveyard. The only thing is that you just will get the draw. It only gets the draw if it's sent from hand. So we're actually gonna send Retribution here. And then we're actually gonna use Retribution Effect, banish itself to add our Lost. Now we have an uninteractable Branded Fusion unless they have Ash. But let's be real, if they had Ash, they probably would have Ashed the Kid or something like that. So now we're gonna activate the Branded Lost. Then we're gonna activate the Branded Fusion. And here's the really gas part, is that like this is gonna basically lock your opponent from being able to respond until you actually get the Lubellion on board. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's just say they have like Mudora or something like that in the grave. It doesn't even matter because we're going to go Albion Effect here. And we're going to go Albion, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, Branded Lost to search. We're going to add the Mercurier here. And since we have extra gas in the grave, we're actually going to use Albaz. And we're going to use Magnemut in grave to fuse and get banished. Because the main reason why I like doing this is because I don't want my opponent to be able to use my Magnemut against me, which is also why I cut down the count of Magnemut to 2. And we're going to make Lubellion. Like I said, this entire thing is unrespondable as long as your fusion effects are Chainlink 1. So now we're in the response window of a fusion monster being summoned. We're going to go Lubellion Effect. We're actually going to pitch the Mercurier here. Oh, I forgot to put Albion on the bottom of the deck earlier, sorry. It's going to be shuffled in somewhere in there. Doesn't really matter. So we're going to go Lubellion Chainlink 1. That's actually our only Chainlink. So we're going to use Lubellion and Albaz. And now we actually get to make a Mirror Jade. And so guess what? Now what's actually really cool is that since we just fusion summoned a monster, our opponent cannot respond. This whole window is uninteractable, and what we're going to actually do here is not activate anything, which means that there's no resolution of chain for them to respond to or anything like that. And so what's going to happen now is that we're gonna go back to open game state. In an open game state, the turn player has priority to either like do a summon that does not start a chain, or to activate a quick effect or a fast effect or whatever. So with our turn player priority, we're gonna actually use Albion here. Or sorry, we're gonna use the Albion as tribute fodder or whatever you want to call it for Lubellion through his summon condition. And so now they can't even be like, oh well, I wanted to like Bystial your Lubellion, or I wanted to DD Crow it or whatever. So from the time Lubellion hit from the deck to the grave, up until the point it's summoned, your opponent cannot respond thanks to Branded Loss. That's absolutely insane. Now what we're gonna go Lubellion effect to place. We're actually gonna place Branded Beast. So what's really cool about this line is that we actually had extra material engraved to use, because sometimes you want to try to use the material engraved and not in hand. That way you have more cards in hand for like discard fodder, for like Lubellion, stuff like that. So it's actually really cool as we set this up to have our Mercurier engraved. Like for example, if your opponent didn't respond at all, like in this scenario, now you can actually do something like Magnamut, targeting the Mercurier to banish. Now we're going to go Magnamut effect to search during the end phase, and we're going to go Chainlink 2 Mercurier to search. So Mercurier will actually get you your Albion back. Not that that really matters. Not that that really matters because we've already used the effect, unfortunately. But if we hadn't used it, we could actually use it to draw another card and put another. You could actually put like Albaz engraved if you wanted to. That way, you have Branded Red becomes live here. Unfortunately, right in this scenario, it's kind of dead because we didn't mill a Despia monster. But now we're actually gonna. You can either set it or keep it in hand. It really doesn't matter. But we're gonna set it here. We're gonna go Albion effect during the end phase to set the Branded Banishment, because Banishment will indeed be live during our opponent's turn because we have the Albion that we summoned successfully. And then we're also going to be able to search from the Magnamut. You either get Sarnir here, or you can get Druid Swarm, depending on what you think your opponent's playing or what your opponent is playing. It doesn't really matter that much. Sarnir is nice because it sets it up for, if Branded Beast survives the turn, you can set it up for regain to actually hit your field during their end phase. So basically what you have here is you have Rukalos as a Solemn Warning. You have the Mirror Jade Banish. You have the Lubellion that you're going to tribute off the Branded Beast, or the Magnamut for the pop. You have a potentially live Branded in red, depending on what. If you can find a way to discard this Albion, this Branded red becomes live because it's we call it Fallen of Albaz. But then you also have a Sarnir Disruption and then a Banishment. So you have a lot of interactions here. So like for example, if you end up going like Sarnir on their turn, and then you actually tribute it off the Beast, you can go Sarnir effect engrave. You can either dump the opening, which is kind of nice if you feel like your opponent's going to try to like blow up your board with like destruction effects, or you can go regained, because then during the end phase, Beast will actually replace the regained. And then you have basically your whole gambit of continuous spells and traps here. Not to mention Mirror Jade is going to send like another Albion, so you have like more follow up again that you can search with. So the deck has like a lot of different options depending on what you want to do. Sometimes you can actually make both of these cards live, which is absolutely insane, especially if you open with a like a Lubra or like a Tragedy or something like that. So even without having access to our Despias, we still have a pretty insane board. The other thing I like about this deck too is that it puts bodies on board on your opponent's turn. So let's just say you're playing against Flunder. Having those bodies on board turn 1 are super beneficial for you, because you want to be able to beat over like the barrier statue, beat over their disruptions, etc. And so you want to have those already on board. That way you can just go like basically like straight to battle phase and like force them to interact with you or do something. So for example, just say you're playing against something, go normal summon Robina. You go Haviness effect, we mill 3. Honestly, it doesn't even matter what we mill here. So obviously we whiffed. What's actually kind of cool is that on resolution of their chain, we can go Magnamut effect. We could just banish something like the Jewish Swarm, like we're never going to be using that anyway. Magnamut effect on summon, and then now you can get something else. So you can get like Albaz if you need it. You can get any dragon during the end phase. You can get something like Lubellion, kind of thin out the deck, or have like some more material for like summoning like later, etc. So like it gives you like a lot of different options just by having like something like these two cards in hand that you just didn't have before with this deck, because this deck just didn't summon on your opponent's turn. So before, I could have a hand that's like this, and this hand against like any other deck is like insane. We could even add these two if we wanted to. Against any other deck, this hand's insane. Against Flunder, this is absolute dog shit. You can't do anything with this hand. And so what's really cool now is that with the addition of the tiers, assuming you have Haviness or something like that, it just gives you more options. You can even find a way sometimes get into either Kit or even Rukalos on their turn, which means that you just have big bodies to be able to beat over them with, which is really what you want. That way you can like force interactions, force plays, etc. to where you can just you don't need to just take the loss from them like round 1 if you lose the die roll. Last but not least, I'll quickly go over the side. 3 Droll, that's mostly just for Flunder. One Mudora, one Keldo, because when you're going against tier, I want them to try to mill my deck more. Even if they decide not to do it, these are good discards for Lebellion to just have for like be able to for continuation. Also, you might mill them off your own tiers, etc. 3 Cosmic Cyclone for back row decks. 2 Talents, 2 Evenly. This was a third, so the 3 Droll was a third Mudora, 3rd Talents, 3rd Evenly. But I ended up cutting it for more Drolls because this is good against generically against a lot of different decks. Plus, like I said, I wanted more Flunder Hate. And the MVP is 3 Solemn Judgments. I can't tell you how many times my opponent thought they had me with a Lightning Storm, evenly matched, whatever, because this deck sets up so much back row. That's kind of like now your main form of interactions. You might have one Mirror Jade. You might have like a Masquerade on board or something like that. Maybe a Bystial, but most decks can play around that with no problem, especially like one Disruption. So what ends up happening is you have like the 1 Disruption, maybe 2 if you're lucky, if you have like Rukalos or whatever. And then you have like the insane Disruption with the back row with the Branded Beast. Branded Lost gets you an extra card if you fusion summon as well, which also gives you the Mercurial if you didn't have to use it in the combo like I showed you earlier. Also, they have like the Branded Banishment, Branded Red, Super Poly, etc. So many different threats that your opponent doesn't have to deal with if they blow out your back row. If they evenly match you, it really fucking sucks. So 3 Solemn Judgment saved my ass so many times. Also saved my ass against a Flunder matchup. I actually ended up winning because I had set up Branded Beast with Solemn Judgment set. They tried to use the map. I popped it with, my hand was really bad by the way. I ended on something dumb like normal summon a Luber with like Bystial. I had to set up a Bystial under D-Shifter, which means I lost like most of my material. They impermed the Aluber, and so I basically had Aluber plus Beast plus a Bystial on board, which really sucks, and Solemn set. But this was enough to play through their stuff because they try to go map effect. I pop it with the Bystial, with Beast and Bystial, and they go normal summon Robina or Eglin or whatever, and then I Solemn it. They have to pass. They can't do anything else. All right, that's gonna pretty much cover it, guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer them below. I have a really good time with this deck. I think I've pretty much won every match I played against except for 1 Flunder match in the past like 2 weeks. So I've gone pretty much almost undefeated with this deck. Like I said, the versatility of this deck with the new options with the tiers and everything like that is just unmatched and insane. This deck I think really does mesh well together, and I prefer the small tier package just to be able to kind of add some variety to the deck and add some flavor. That's pretty much going to be it. You guys have a good one.